African Bank, audacity to believe.
Allow Palwe to guide you through your morning banking experience right here on African Bank Radio.
Wellness Wednesday on African Bank Radio.
It's a Wellness Wednesday, and we're talking about the types of foods that can help you with stress management. Stress is a daily struggle, right? How it is that you process stress, how you have your outlets so you reduce the effect of stress on your body. Sometimes it manifests as headaches that won't go away, chronic pain, all of those kinds of things, but maybe even in the diet that we're consuming on a day-to-day basis. What changes and tweaks can we make? Also lifestyle things like hiking and taking a walk every now and then, exercising on a regular basis can make a difference in terms of managing and alleviating the effects of stress. Speaking to us now, dietitian Malibi Nabutsane joins us on the line. Thank you so much for your time. How are you today?
I'm good and you?
Wonderful. Wonderful to have you. Have you had a good Women's Month?
Yeah, no, it's been a great one.
Fantastic. Love to hear it. So let's talk about the effect that diet can have in terms of how we carry our everyday stress.
Thank you for that question, Palwe. I think perhaps before I talk about the actual diet, maybe I should just in brief mention how stress affects our bodies, so that at least the listeners understand how their nutrition will play a role in that sense.
Yeah.
So, like you mentioned, a lot of us do experience stress. It's something that, we can't always run away from.
Yeah.
And, sometimes it might be really a real event that causes the stress, or sometimes it might be perception. But unfortunately, how our body reacts, it just reacts based on the stress, whether it's an actual thing or it's just a perception. Mm-hmm. So the first thing that your body will try to do is protect itself. Yes. And it will release hormones like adrenaline.
Yeah.
And if for some reason that the stress doesn't go away, then it ends up releasing what we call cortisol. And a lot of times the cortisol is what makes people gain a lot of weight, especially around the belly, or
abdominal area.
The abdominal fat, yes. And then eventually then it results in inflammation and then some, tissue damage.
Yeah.
So with nutrition, we want to try and avoid that. And if it does happen, we want also to be able to manage that. Mm-hmm. So what is important in terms of diet, it's what we call complex carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So complex carbohydrates would include things that are high in fiber or things that are not processed. And I understand, like these days, it's very difficult to get, whole foods. It's very difficult. But it would include things like oats, brown rice, whole wheat bread, and so forth.
Yeah.
Another thing that is very important, especially when it relates to repairing that tissue damage or cell damage, would be foods like fruits and vegetables, and particularly because these fruits and vegetables are high in what we call antioxidants.
Yeah.
And we know that antioxidants are important in terms of actually fighting what we call oxidative stress.
Yeah.
And other foods that are important would be your fatty fish, things like your sardines, salmon, and mackerel, and also your foods that are high in omega-3 would include the fish that I've already mentioned, and also like your nuts, your seeds, your chai seeds.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately what's important is to understand that it has to be a diverse diet that contains complex carbohydrates and high in fruits and vegetables.
How do you counter? I mean, everything that you've spoken about, I'm starting to, add the rands and cents in my head. and I know, when we have conversations every now and then, whether it's in my circle or just within the nature of the work that I do, we're always talking about, the cost of living crisis and how expensive everything has become. So how do we make the changes and incorporate some of these whole foods, as you're saying, that are so necessary in terms of, just feeling better in our bodies, feeling more present, feeling lighter, and ultimately reducing the stress levels that are taken on by the effects of stress? How do we do all of that within a reasonable budget, given that everything seems to be soaring in terms of price?
I think when it relates to cost and the ability to buy and access healthy food, it should be what we call a multi-pronged approach for us as individuals. I think when I speak of multi-pronged approach, I think the first thing is that we know as government always would release, whether it's legislation or policy around how food should be taxed and how do we make food much more affordable. So I think it's important as citizens to be as actively, involved in when those decisions are made, so that if we feel that more food needs to be, tax-free, we should be raising our voices around that.
Yeah.
And then I think, and secondly, the other thing that is very important, I think, growing your own food, it's still it's still a much more affordable thing.
Absolutely.
For you to do. I remember growing up, almost every household had a mulberry tree, had a leafy vegetable garden. And like I mentioned, antioxidants, mulberries are actually very high also in antioxidants. So I feel like if we're still able to, grow our own food, it's one way of actually reducing costs.
Yeah.
And I know also sometimes people would tend to find buying vegetables from grocery stores more expensive. So I think the other alternative is that if you do have a local market or local farmer, it's always a good idea to support them, because you're supporting not only the local economy and also you're able to save a few rand.
Yeah.
Otherwise, other options would be for you want to look out for promotions and buy in bulk. If you're able to share those, like the large amount of food that you would have bought with a friend, you could share just to avoid wastage. So there are various ways that one could, make sure that they get as much nutrients as possible and that they improve the quality of their food.
And you're quite right. Your local grocer, 100% of the time, they'll have lower prices on their fresh fruit and vegetables. If you go to street vendors as well, in the city centers, even in your local area, they usually buy in smaller quantities, yes. But, if you're going to be cooking something for that week, instead of just buying fruits and vegetables in bulk, and most of them go off anyway. So making that a habit, supporting your local grocer and buying from them can really significantly reduce some of your costs. And of course, consult a dietitian if you're having a hard time. I know we tend to go to Google and listen to what other influencers are saying out there in the social media space about how it is that we can manage our weight gain and all of that. It might be bigger than just you're eating badly. It might be you're finding it hard to regulate just what is happening with your body and managing stress on top of that. So consult with a dietitian. Those who are listening to us right now, Malibina, how do they find you?
Is it possible for me to just add one thing that I feel like is very important that I missed out?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, there's a new evidence every day that shows that our gut health and our mental health is intertwined.
Yeah.
So it's important that we also keep our gut health in check. So there are foods that help in terms of ensuring that we have that good bacteria that grows in our guts that helps with health. Mm-hmm. So I would just like to mention the foods that we encourage people to eat for that.
Please.
So it's mostly fermented foods.
Okay.
So fermented foods would be things like your yogurt, your ingomazi, or your ding, your sour porridge.
Right.
I think Africans would call it that ding, or Botswana people would call it ding. And also things like sauerkraut. So all those fermented things are also good for our gut. And fiber also, it's something that is very important.
Okay.
And I also remember, if you are able to get things like probiotics or prebiotics, it's things that you can add in your diet to help with your gut health. And I think also, lastly, another thing that is important to managing stress, we spoke about what to eat, but how to eat is also important.
Oh, okay.
It's important that when we eat, we are mindful of what we're eating. We should try to focus on the food that we're eating, enjoy the food that we're eating, avoid distractions, because how we eat, the slower we eat, the better for our digestion, and it also helps in terms of promoting relaxation. So mindful eating is one thing that we also, advocate for.
Love that. Love that. Sure, be mindful, avoid distractions, concentrate on what you're eating, and make sure you're chewing your food properly. You don't have teeth anywhere else but your mouth. So make sure that you're chewing and you're grinding on your food properly. Malibina, how do we find you on social media?
Well, on social media, it's mostly LinkedIn. So it's Malibina Botsani on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm. They need to consult.
I'm based in Pretoria East, Olympus Medical Center.
Yeah.
In Pretoria East.
Wonderful stuff. Thank you so very much for the generosity of your time. Thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you. Hopefully we'll chat to you again soon. Thank you so much, Malibina. Have a good day further.
No, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, what a great conversation. Goodness. Malibina Botsani. She is a dietitian. Please do reach out to her on social media and maybe consult with her as well if you're having a particularly hard time as far as this is concerned. Stress management and your diet. It is a real thing. 9 minutes now before 10.
Wellness Wednesday on African Bank Radio.